Welcome to today's episode of Expert Showcase. Today on the show we have Kylee Ellis, and she's going to be talking to you, teaching you, and showing you all about how to automate your marketing by publishing a book to generate prepaid clients. Hey Kylee, how you doing today?
Good, thanks, Chris. Excited to be here.
Epic. Well, we are so looking forward to having you on today because let's face it, everyone wants to automate and everyone wants to generate prepaid clients because I can't think of anything better to have than just have a boatload of clients that are prepaid coming in and you know where your income is coming from, and it's got to be much easier. But I'm sure we'll get to all that in the second part of the show. For those of you who are new to the show, we split the show up in two parts. First part, we talk about our epic guest hero's journey. The second part, we focus on their area of expertise. So today we're going to be talking to Kylee Ellis, and we're going to hear all about her heroine's journey. And Kylee, why don't you start us off and give us a brief overview of your heroine's journey?
Sure. Well, as with all good journeys, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. I like to think there's not an end, and it's just the start of the next journey. But I actually started, the problem with how I started is I started young. I started at the point in time when I was actually working for someone else, and they tried to fire me. And you know, young people, you've got a bit of a big head. What do you mean you're firing me? You can't fire me, I quit. So, unemployed for a moment and not wanting to be unemployed, I decided to open a business the very next day. So there was that much thought put into it, to be perfectly honest with you. Of course, the reason they tried to fire me, having never been fired before in my life, was because they actually said they believed I could run their business better than they could, and I was formerly trained as a graphic designer. And they said, well, anyone can do graphic design, but only you can run our company. But they knew I didn't want to be unemployed, so they had to fire me as a graphic designer before they thought I would accept the administration job. Well, you already heard what I said to that, but I thought, hold on, if they think I can run their business, I'm running mine. And I literally opened the next day. The problem is I opened a business with not much planning and no finance behind it. So the first thing I did was go to the bank to try and get a loan. But a young person who doesn't own property and has no assets to put behind them, of course the bank laughed at me. Around the same time, within that first year of starting the business off, and by the way, it started off very successfully, except for there was no finance behind it, GFC hit. So now the banks really didn't want to give me a loan. So it was all a very, very interesting time period. But what I did was I literally built a business from nothing and with a knowledge base of my skills and experience, but actually learning as you go. And that's part of my journey. For example, I told you I'm trained as a graphic designer. So when I opened my graphic design studio, and my first customer came to me and said, can you design my book? I went, sure, I'm a graphic designer. I can design your book, no problem. Then it was like, can you sell my book? Sell it online? I can build websites. I'm a graphic designer. Sure, we can do that. Then it was, can you print my book? How hard can it be to become a print broker? Sure, I'll work out how to do that. Then it was, can you distribute my book all over the world in bookstores and get me international credibility? Not a problem. And as you can see, I was a very quick learner. But to be perfectly honest with you, my first 12 customers were all books. I thought I was a graphic designer, and from that first book, it was like, oh, can you do my series? And so on and so forth. Some of those questions were asked by different people, but in a range of about, well, not very long, 6 to 12 months, 95% of the work in my graphic design studio was in publishing. So this was the turning point of my journey. I was seeing the results I was getting for my customers, and I was getting one of two things. There was no grey. I was either bringing them in a six-figure income from book sales alone, so they were reordering large volumes multiple times a year, because back then it was printing offshore to get low print prices and bringing them in through customs, or they were getting absolutely no results at all, as in they were literally printing boxes and boxes of unopened books and not selling one and wondering why. I looked at the key difference between the two customers. The ones that were extremely successful were marketing their book, and the ones that had absolutely no result had done jack all since the beautiful books arrived successfully published and wondered what they did wrong. So that was a huge turning point for me. I was like, I can see what's working, I can see what's not working, but it's not working for me. I was coming to the office at 5 o'clock when my staff went home and leaving at 9 in the morning trying to keep this business running and growing. By that stage, I had about 12 people in an office, physical office. This is before I went virtual. And that just wasn't working for me. So I said, stuff this, I'm going to practice what I preach. And I did exactly what my customers were doing. I brought out the first in my series of books. I profiled myself as the expert in their field. I launched as the publishing queen, and everything changed from that point in time. It was a matter of months before the office was gone and we moved to a virtual office. Everyone went home, changed from staff to subbies. We could grow and be global. I started traveling Australia, running seminars, workshops. The sky was the limit there. But it was a huge turning point. One, getting from the initial, you don't need to have any capital necessarily to start your business, getting from the initial, oh, hold on, but you don't need to know how to do it. You can't do that. No, I'll work it out on the way. Through to, hold on, you've done it for someone else, but do you believe enough in yourself to do it for you?
Right.
So,
Couple things real quick before we dig into each one of those sections, folks. If you haven't guessed, Kylie's from Australia, and you're going to hear some what I'll call Australianisms like subbies. What I know some people from Australia, and the first time I heard the word brekkie, I'm like, what? You know, somebody said, "Hey, why don't you come to brekkie with us tomorrow?" And I went, "What the heck is brekkie?" And I breakfast, and it was at that point I realized that there's must be a sub language in Australia that just shortens every single word and adds e onto the end of
yeah,
it,
yeah,
and you
there is.
kind of have to understand exactly exactly what the root of that
My
word is.
apologies.
So so I was going to say,
Subcontractors.
so I got subcontractors, but I'm just trying to give our listeners an Australian to English dictionary or an English to English dictionary, as some people would say. So if you hear anything in an E on the end, it's probably just a shortened version of what you naturally think is longer. But, you know, if you have any questions, you can feel free to comment on the video below or send us the questions here at BCN TV at Expert Showcase, and we'll be happy to provide a translation for you. But so, Kylie, it sounds like you've had an epic journey. Let's dig into each of those pieces individually. Let's start off with the
No
beginning.
problem.
And the interesting part is it sounds like during the beginning, I think you said you were actually working for a company and you were doing so well that they thought they needed to fire you because you wouldn't accept a new job that they were going to be offering you.
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
You did hear that right. It doesn't make much sense to the average person. It didn't make much sense to me at the time either. At that point in time, I'd run a series of businesses at a young age unofficially. I'd worked very hard for various people coming up from a background of where you worked hard for your money. That's how it worked. So I'd actually never been employed in a day in my life. And I prided myself on this fact. I'd always talked about it, how, quit several jobs, but I'd never been fired, and they knew that. The job they actually offered me, even though they told me I could run their business better than them, even though they told me, by the way, this was a small company. I was their only graphic designer. They had one sales rep, and they were the partnership, the couple that was running it. And they basically wanted me to do their job. And I'm like, well, you got one sales rep, you got one graphic designer, like I'm doing your job. But they were going to call it admin. In other words, they were going to pay me half the rate of a graphic designer to basically manage their business. So they knew I would never accept a pay cut. They wanted to start part-time. They knew I'd never want to go from full-time to part-time. But they also knew, because I mentioned about, little kid, big head, oh, yeah, I've never been employed a day in my life. I'm so hireable. At one stage, I actually had 200 job offers come in the same day. Like, I really had a big head, just to be honest with you, know where I've come from. So, yeah, that's what they said to me. They said, we know you would never accept this unless you were unemployed, so you're no longer working for us as a graphic designer. Would you like the admin job?
Okay, so that really was, and that's part of what I was getting at, is because sometimes in business, we as business owners and entrepreneurs, sometimes our rationale makes sense to us, but it doesn't make sense to anybody else. And sometimes,
Yeah.
our clients' rationale makes sense to them, but it doesn't make sense to us or anybody else. So in their mind, they really thought that it sounds like, if I can translate for a second, it sounds like they really thought that once they fired you, you weren't going to be able to find a job, and that they were going to kind of almost
Exactly.
force you into accepting this other position and be able to cut your pay and give you different and more responsibilities. Kind of like what clients do. Kind of interestingly enough, probably kind of like what even some book publishing clients of yours do, and clients
Oh,
of
people do it all the time. Yeah. Can I
where
get more out of you for less money?
well, and they put you in a situation where, and I guess that's the point I'm really trying to bring out about your beginning, is you were put in a situation where the person you were dealing with really felt that they were putting you in a situation that they had control. and what you did was
Mm.
you stood your ground and you said, "No, I don't, I don't think so. That's fine. You can, I'll quit, or you can fire me, or what have you. And I'm just going to go do something better." I mean, is that a good characterization?
Yeah, that's a really good summary.
Cool. And that, like I said, that kind of. So do you think that lesson applies also in business? Like when a client comes to you and, I'll say
Totally.
maybe tries to lowball you or something like that.
Yeah, totally. But both ways. Like indirectly, they tried to fire me. I quit, but I could say I fired my boss. People say that all the time. They fire their boss, they open their own business. You can fire your clients as well. If you don't like the way they are treating you, and it happens to me actually quite a lot because as I grow and develop my business, I'm going a different direction. I've got clients that are pushing me a direction I don't want to go. So you have the choice. And you don't have to be mean or cruel about it, but you can say things like, oh, sorry, we don't do that kind of work anymore, or I've actually got such and such to recommend you to that might be better to help you out with this. You don't have to take on the work you don't want to. So
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
And it's also don't, regardless of what situation you're in, financially or otherwise, do everything you can to prevent people from painting you into a corner and from really,
Yeah,
holding something over you, because once they do it once, you don't know what they're likely to do it again and again and again, right?
exactly. And if you
So
refer to it as you did, kind
go
of
ahead.
like pushing you into a corner, you've only got so many corners in the room. If you've got customers cornering you left, right, and centre, you can't service the rest of your customer base. So you need to be available. Like I now run, we'll get to that later, a fully virtual, fully automated business. Now that means I've got all my time up my sleeve to fill in what I want. If I want to fill it in with, for example, lead generation methods, or I want to fill it in with cross-promotional discussions, if I've got those kind of customers hanging around that want to fill it in with an hour phone call every day discussing what's going wrong in their life and how I can fix, that's not how I want to fill it in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And then you can choose and you can be flexible, because there might be times where you want to fill it in with hours upon hours of just trying to fix what's going on in other people's lives. And then there's times you want to fill it in with lead generation, where, like I know now, there's a number of face groups. Right now as we're recording this, I'm a little bit bigger into doing some help on Facebook. So I'm out on Facebook groups a
Yep.
long time during the day, just to help some people get ahead. And there's going to be times where I'm going to be completely non-existent doing that, because there'll be different things
Busy
going
with other
on.
things.
Yeah, exactly. So, what else from the beginning phase? And it's interesting because we're probably going to elongate the turning point, because you really had two turning points. The one was when you got fired,
Yeah.
because that's what switched you into a business, and the second one was it's kind of like the roller coaster that everybody rides. You had the one turning point that got you into the business, but then you found something in the business that was the most successful, and that helped you pivot again. But when it
Hmm.
comes to the beginning, is there any other learning or anything else you took away from the beginning phase before you started your business that you
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think on a subconscious level, while I didn't let the lack of finance bother me, it was a turning point where I had to think about and say, well, how am I going to do this without money? How am I going to finance things? And as a result of that, once I launched as the publishing queen, it went into my training. Like I was teaching such as cash flow positive book publishing, where you got paid to market your business instead of paying to do so, turning marketing from a traditional business expense to a profit generating exercise. I was doing things like teaching pre-sale, so you didn't actually ever spend a cent on the publishing process. You funded your publishing process out of someone else's pocket. I think because that's where I started, I wanted to make sure that no one had a limitation when they were starting their journey.
Yeah, that
So
and
indirectly,
yeah, and that's an epic point to bring up. Just the fact of, and that's what I love about this, is the fact that you learned something right at that time at the beginning, right where you had to start making the change. And even though
yeah,
you did it on your own, you're not the type that, and we've talked a number of times, you're not the type, or don't seem like the type, to throw that back in people's faces. What you've done is, instead of judging people, and instead of saying, "Look, I did it with no money, you can too," what you've done is you've come up with systems to say, "I did it with no money, but you don't have to. This is what I
yeah,
went through. Now I've come up with
exactly.
stuff to prevent you from having to go through it." Is that correct?
Exactly. I believe strongly in the four E's: the easiest, most effective, most economical, and most efficient way of doing absolutely anything. If it doesn't meet my four E's, I don't do it. And as a result, I'm constantly improving everything I do and everything I teach so that people never have to go do things the slow, hard, expensive way to not get the results they want, basically.
Right. And you're such a low energy, calm type of person that sarcasm. There's my sarcastic comment for the day. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get into the turning point. And the first turning point, like I said, we might. I'm not sure how long this is going to go because you really had two, but let's focus on the first one. You already talked a little bit about it, but tell us a little bit more about that time where you started the business. And I know you started the next day after you quit, but give us, some of your learnings and kind of what you were going through at
No,
that
that's
point.
cool. I wanted to do it smart, but smart is generally not starting without a plan. So day one, I kind of tried to create a plan. And what I did was I rang the local, I think it was the government area at the time, and I said, is there any business courses going? I've opened a business today. I better train myself in how to run a business. I'm trained as a graphic designer. I don't know much about business. I mean, unofficially, I'd been running businesses since age 8, but that wasn't, within, officially through the tax department or anything like that. And they said, oh, yeah, there is an intake, but it started last week. And I went, oh, when's the next course? And it was ages ago. And I said, oh, sorry, ages to go. And I said, well, what does that mean? It says, oh, well, you can do the course and you'll be really qualified, but you can't open until you graduate. And I went, hold on, I can't open until I graduate. But I'm opening today. Like, I want to get trained. I can't wait to open my business. I've just quit my job. And they said, oh, well, would it be easier if you did the current course? And I said, well, yeah, I've only missed a week. I can catch up. How long's the course? And they said, well, it's only 6 weeks, but at the end of the 6 weeks, you have to present a 100-plus page business plan to a group of potential investors. And they're not going to invest in your business, but if they approve it, you get the stamp approval, you're allowed to open. I said, so if I start today, I'm allowed to open in like 5 weeks' time. Well, no, that's not about 2 weeks till you can present. So I said, so if I start today, I'm allowed to open in like 2 months' time. And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, I can't do that. I said, well, can you put off charging people so long as the invoice is dated? Like, they're telling me all these ways to get around when to open. I'm like, you know what, let's just go with this. They said, well, can you come down here? I said, I can't come down here. I've just told you I've opened today. I need to do the work for the people I'm going to have as customers. They said, oh, well, what are we going to do about this? I said, do you offer it by correspondence? They said, no. I said, could you? They said, well, I suppose we've never done that before, and an institution that never offered correspondence, I was their first correspondence customer. I did have to go physically down to actually present for that last day, but I did the whole course via correspondence. So I did it at night time because I was running the business in the day. So I spent 8 hours a day working on my business. I spent 4 hours out on the streets. I literally went out door knocking. I knocked on people's doors with a flyer I'd created, a really simple flyer, because as I said, I thought I was going to do graphic design, not books. So, would you like your business cards or your printed marketing materials done? Things like that, opening specials. Spent 4 hours a day walking the streets and then came back with the work I got and spent 4 hours a day quoting and actually doing the jobs. The problem was in the space of about 2 weeks, I didn't have time to walk the streets. So the technique worked very, very well, such that by the time I had the physical office, which was about 12 months later, I was getting people calling up saying, oh, there was a young girl that walked in, I don't know, about 12 months ago, and she handed us a flyer. Look, we're not interested in business cards, but we've got a range of books that we've just lost our current supplier. Would you be able to print them? And by that stage, I was a print broker, so, it kind of flowed in really nicely. But once again, it was almost by accident. It's like things were set for me. I didn't choose my direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the one thing I guess I'll disagree with you a little bit about being by accident because one of the things that I do know from talking with you, and even our viewers should hear by your the way you talk today, is the fact that you're high energy and you're making things happen. And that's what people have to
Yeah.
understand is when you're out making things happen. And for those of you, look, I hate cold calling and I hate walking door to door, so that's something I don't do. But I do my active business creation and other methods. So the whole point is if you're not a big door to door, don't use that as an excuse not to do something. But what Kylie is
Yeah, there's other
showing,
ways.
yeah, exactly. What Kylie is showing you is the fact that, you know, when you go out there and she's humble enough to say, look, it was just, it wasn't what I anticipated, but it was just laid out for me. But you did the work and you were out there and you put forth the effort to make good things happen. It might not have been what you originally thought was going to happen, which is okay. I mean, this is where you have to people have to understand that it's the process and the journey more than the destination they think they're going to get to, because a lot of times by
Yeah.
the time you take that journey, the destination is completely different. You might think you want to write a book on this and it might end up being a book on that, and if you're settled on this
Totally.
and nobody wants to buy this but everybody wants to buy that, let's face it, you'd rather be selling that than this. So I think you made
Very important point.
Yeah, thank you. And I think as a lot of people say, you made your own luck during that time period. You also got to your second turning point, which is you were starting to be successful and you weren't tied to what you thought you were going to do. You saw all this work for books coming in. So kind of tell us a little bit about how that happened and what you learned from that.
Yeah, good point. I'll start with the learning. I learned an awful lot. And when I said it happened by accident, I hear your point 100%. But what I learned was to go with the flow. Like when that first customer came to me and asked me to do their book, it wasn't the kind of book I'd do now. But I was like, sure, I could do a book. But it looked great. Even though it wasn't my style of book, and I'm not going to tell you what it was because I don't want to insult the customer, it was a professional, high quality, good graphic design, well printed book. So I was also out networking by this stage, of course. And when people saw what I did, they said, look, I've got some books I wanted to bring out, but I want them that standard. So my second customer was actually a series of books. And she didn't even want to sell them anywhere. She didn't want to put them in bookstores. She didn't want an online business. All she wanted was she was a speaker and she wanted to sell the books afterwards when she spoke, as people do. So she was traveling the world and constantly calling me saying, can you ship some more books to this address, that address, so on and so forth. My third customer, I suppose, book 5, was someone who I met at a conference, because, by the way, I was out every weekend doing personal business development as well. Yeah, I was keen. I see your point. And she actually heard someone present from stage saying you need to publish a book while sitting next to me. And she turned to me and she goes, don't you do that? I'm like, yeah. And she goes, how much to do mine? And we did her book and her audio book. So not just e-books, we did audio books then. From there, people go, oh, did you do such and such's? Got them on board. That was a local customer that actually came from a statewide customer when they heard I did such and such's book. Then we went national from there because they started recommending me to all their friends. So by the time we were to about book 12, as I said, and I started making changes in the business, we were national presence, which is why I started the tour, because I already had clients in every state of Australia.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And the interesting part is you put yourself in the this is what I really want our viewers to take away from this. You put yourself in the right situation to be able to succeed. Too many times I see
Exactly.
speakers, I see authors, I see entrepreneurs, they're holed up in their office or they're so focused on running their business and working inside of their business and they're not focused on working on their business and then they wonder why they don't get any more clients. They think that the word of mouth thing is going to be great, and to a point it is, and to a point even you had a lot of great results from word of mouth. But fact of the matter
You're
is,
right.
if you wouldn't have been sitting at that conference next to that person, they wouldn't have been able
Yeah.
to turn to you to say, "Hey, can you do this for me?" and on and on and on. So that's the other thing from hearing your story that I want people to really pick up. And the final thing, before I ask you if there's anything more you want to add in on the turning point, and then we go to the aftermath, is if you don't find yourself, if you're watching this and don't find yourself with the energetic, bubbly, effervescent personality that Kylee has, that's okay. Hire somebody like her. Meaning,
Yep.
meaning when you're doing the book,
Exactly.
hire Kylee or hire somebody, subcontract, get a friend, find your happiest, most bubbly friend, and just have them help you. Because even if you're the one doing the work and somebody else is out there at the conferences, you as a team can get and can make things successful. Just like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. I mean, Wozniak wanted to build computers, Jobs wanted to sell them. It was a match made in heaven. So before we go on to the aftermath, anything else you want to leave our viewers with about the turning point?
That's probably about it at that stage.
Okay, then let's go ahead and move into the aftermath. And this is the time after that second turning point, the aftermath after you started to realize that books were going to be either a minor or a major part. So take us back to the beginning. Did you realize at the beginning of the aftermath, after the turning point, did you realize how major of a player books were going to be in your future plans?
I did as soon as it started changing. Like I was planning, as I said, just doing business cards and stationery and printed marketing materials and things like that. And it didn't happen, and it didn't happen so fast that I did get a keen indicator. The most recent change of direction I've had, I guess, is the rebranding and adding the end marketing to my title. I don't think I saw that coming. Like I was very clear it was books, but it wasn't until um, even a long time after, like that second turning point where I relaunched myself as the publishing queen because I wanted to do what my successful customers were doing and follow in their footsteps so I could have the dream life, have work-life balance, not just help other people create it. I was very clear how books fitted in then, but I don't think I realized, even though the major difference was those who marketed and those didn't, how important marketing would become. Because, of course, a successfully published book, everyone wants one of those, and I've been doing this for years. I can give you that with my eyes closed. But a successfully marketed book, that's a lot harder because that's where the work comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's interesting because one thing I want our viewers to really hone in on is Kylie's got this very high energy. And you would think that somebody with high energy is going to be going a million miles an hour and not see the nuances in their business. And the reason I bring that up is because we have a lot of people who watch this show who have high energy because I'm a high energy guy and like attracts like. So if you think that just because you're high energy, you can't see the nuances in your business, Kylie is a great example of exactly the opposite. There was this nuance in her business that she could realize what was going on and realize it was going to be a major part of her business, even though she was going a million miles an hour. I mean, is that a fair? Am I overstating, understating, or is that a fair statement?
No, it's a good statement. I like to think I work with both sides of the brain because they complement each other. I know people think they're very much left-sided or right-sided, but as you mentioned before, work to your strengths. It doesn't matter which side you have. If you're not naturally gifted with both, which, let's face it, not everyone is, hire someone on the other side. I happen to use both. I call it natural gifting because I don't think I planned it. But at the same time, I hire people in both because why would I want to do things I don't need to?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you use both sides because you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So half your brain works 12 hours. Half your brain works 12 hours.
And
The
the
other
other
half
work.
works the other
Yep,
12 hours, right? That's how you
yep,
sleep.
totally.
You just
Totally. Oh,
shut half
sleep.
of your brain
Where do
off.
I fit sleep in? No, it's funny you say that because, as I said, I now run a fully automated business, which actually means I don't ever need to work. And I actually set that up just as a side point because I've got a couple of kids, had my second child, and went, well, one child you can work part time, but two children, you really have to be a stay at home mum. And it drove me insane. As you can hear, I am so driven. I couldn't be a stay at home mum. So I had to fill up this space, this free space, because I had a fully virtual business with things to do. And as you know, my current calendar, I've been pretty successful at doing that because I just get bored sitting still. I have to be actively doing things. So it's a really interesting point.
Yeah, definitely. And the interesting thing you brought up about marketing and not really knowing how marketing would fit into us. Tell us a little bit about how, what was going on in the business, how you discovered the fact of marketing being such an integral part of making a book successful.
Well, initially it was that turning point because I noticed the distinction, which is why I started doing it. But I didn't realize how important the role would be. I mean, I was always marketing my business, but I started marketing myself the same way I was marketing my customers. And as I said, I started my national tours. I went around Australia. I was running seminars and retreats and boot camps, and I call them boot camps because I'd literally kick people up the behind if they weren't doing what I told them to. Things like that. But once again, I had a huge fan following. I had a lot of referral marketing coming through. So I guess I was sort of taking marketing for granted just because it was naturally working so well for me. But then I did take a time off when I actually stopped to have my first son, or first child. He happened to be my son. And that period where just towards the end of your pregnancy, where you're a little bit big and it's hard to physically get around and be as active as you were, and when you've just had a child and you're literally breastfeeding every hour, and a few things had to change. And so, of course, I slowed down. And then I realized, oh, hold on. This marketing I've been teaching everyone, you don't want to be marketing when you're desperate. You want to be marketing so you're never desperate. Well, I didn't get desperate or anything like that. But I took a 4-month period off, and when I came back, I went, ooh, I haven't been marketing for 4 months. And I think that's when it hit me of how important it was because I was teaching it to other people. And as I said, I went the reverse way around. I didn't do it and then teach it. I actually taught it and then did it because I was working with my customers first. And I know that's a little unusual. But even though I taught it and we learn 95% of what we teach, I obviously missed 5% when applying it to myself.
Well, and I
So that
think,
was probably another turning point for you.
yeah, and I think what is so interesting is that I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and coaches and consultants specifically fall into this trap. We do things for other people or we help other people do things. And we do them so easily, or it comes naturally, or it comes natural for us to do it for other people, that we forget to do them for ourselves. It's the old saying here in the States, physician, heal thyself. It's, some of the, I'll see it on Facebook all the time. Some people who are great at writing copy for other people sit down and go, help, I can't write copy for myself, but I can write it for other
Yeah.
people. And there's this weird mental block that comes in that you can do things easily for other people. And this is a whole another show. Maybe I'll have you back on. We can just kind of talk about this because it sounds like you might know a little bit about this too. There's this weird mental block that happens when people do stuff for themselves that they can find easy
Yeah.
to do for other people. And it's good that you took the time, you slowed down and said, okay, how can I apply this? And to have the courage to apply what you were doing for other people for yourself. Because I think that's what a lot of people lack as well, is the fact that it takes a lot of courage, and as strange as this sounds, and this is the last point I'll say on this, as strange as it sounds, to do something for somebody else takes a lot less courage than to do it for yourself. And that's a whole
Totally.
nother topic. But do you agree with that?
I agree with you 100%. I'm all about another E, empowering people, but I find I spend so long empowering the people I work with, I don't always spend enough time empowering myself. So I hear you 100%.
Definitely. I think that's kind of a good place to wrap up the first half of our show today. Today we're talking with Kylee Ellis, and during the first half, we've talked about her heroine's journey from doing marketing and graphic design to being fired only to be asked to have another job at the same place, into starting her own publishing and marketing empire and becoming the publishing queen, which I forget, is Australia still a colony of England? I mean, would the Queen have any?
Oh, that's always debatable.
Is
Officially, yes, but I don't think anyone here acknowledges it with Australia Day just being the other day.
I was going to say, I didn't want to offend you, but is the Queen upset at all that you're also a queen? I mean, is that causing any?
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. I don't think I've offended her, but there is a guy, and I won't name names, and he's closer to you in the US, and I've definitely offended him. Definitely offended him. He is my biggest referrer. Won't name names, but he regularly writes blog posts about how terrible. Oh dear, matey, you better go. Mummy's on TV. This is my son I was talking about, who I was breastfeeding when I made the change to my direction, and he obviously hasn't got my message to say what time to get back yet. Hi, mate, you better pop out for a second. There you go. Just go down there, and I'm sure Daddy will talk to you. There you go. There's an impromptu thing you weren't expecting there. He's a bit older now, as you can see. He's not breastfed anymore.
I was going to say, I thought we were going to take this show. This really looked like we were about to go way off. It would have been a viral video, but I think so. But anyway, but yeah, we'll have to talk about that off air, because I don't know, I've had a few people in the publishing industry on Expert Showcase. He might have been a previous guest. I don't know, but which is always fun. So, folks, once again, you've been watching Kylee Ellis. We've been talking about her heroine's journey. And in the next segment of Expert Showcase, we're going to talk all about automating your marketing and generating prepaid clients. Stick around, come back in 30 seconds, and we'll be right back. Raise your hand if you could use more clients. Now keep those hands up if you know that the best, most efficient, most effective way to attract your ideal client is to create great client attracting content that connects with your ideal client and makes it easier for you to convert them into paying clients. Now, whether you have your hands up or have your hands down, I invite you to join me on the Create, Connect, and Convert Online Summit. It's where I and other people who are real-world practitioners of creating great client-attracting content are going to share our secrets with you. The summit is online. It runs Wednesday, April 13th through Saturday, April 23rd. You need to go out to the web address on your screen at this point, register to reserve your seat. And remember, you want to join us on the Create, Connect, and Convert Online Summit, because creating content is how you spread your message, reach more people, and make a bigger difference. And we're back with Kylee Ellis. Kylee, it's been epic hearing about your hero's journey. Now we're going to dive right into automate your marketing by publishing a book to generate prepaid clients. I love it. You're talking about automating, about publishing books, and getting prepaid clients. Three things that are near and dear to the heart, or should be, to every coaching consultant out there. Why don't you give us a very quick 60 to 90-second overview of what we're going to be talking about today in your Expert Focus segment?
Yep, good question. Well, in summary, you've hit the 3 points on the head. Three things. Everyone wants an automated business. They want to automate their marketing wherever possible. Second thing is that the book is the best marketing tool to allow you to do that, as well as the content you can leverage from the book, so it doesn't just have to be the book. And thirdly, if correctly done, you can literally fully automate the whole process. So I talk about marketing, but you can actually fully automate marketing, sales, and fulfillment process of your businesses, or I should say processes of your business, depending if you've got a singular, so that you literally don't need to do anything. So for a coach, for example, you can literally rock up to pre-booked, prepaid coaching appointments using these techniques. If you don't want to be a coach, maybe you want to be a speaker, well then you don't have to automate your lead gen. You could manually do your lead gen by speaking into the rest of selling the process through up to your high-end product. Say you don't want to do either, you can actually now 100% fully automate your marketing, sales, and fulfillment just using the book as the start tool and what you leverage from it, so you can literally have a completely passive income and your business runs itself. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Sounds epic. So let's dive right in and let's start off with lead generation. What are we going to be talking about here in the lead generation piece?
Ooh, there's a couple of things there. Firstly, I'm going to say lead gen. Traditionally, it didn't used to be fully automated. And what I mean by that is I just said marketing, sales, and fulfillment. Now, we all know sales is easy to automate. Cha-ching, you do it online. You don't have to worry about that. You can automate any fulfillment. That's not a service. Don't offer services. And you can automate marketing, such as using an ebook that's automatically goes through the sales and fulfillment process, such as various fully automated sales funnels, things like that. What comes before the point the sale is transacted is the marketing. That can all be fully automated. But a lot of people go, yeah, but the lead gen can't, because you've still got to actually send traffic to that very first page of that very otherwise completely fully automated sales funnel. And they're right. So this bugged me for a long time. So I'm actually in the process at the moment of working out how to fully automate lead gen as well. And I'm 99% of the way there. What I mean by that is I can show you right now how to automate your lead gen to the point that the leads automatically come to you. You copy and paste an email to send to them, so it takes a few seconds, and then they automatically go into your sales funnel. But I don't like that because it takes a few seconds, so it's not fully automated. I can actually show you how to skip that process of copying and pasting the email and have it automatically go to them with hi first name and all personalized and stuff like that. But what I don't like about that is there a system that you currently use, and I can talk about it, but it relies heavily on Twitter and LinkedIn, which means you're losing a lot of business off Facebook, Google+, things like that. The next step, and this is top secret information, I am currently working, or I should say my team is, on developing a new technology to overcome all of this. It will be app-based, it will obviously be fully online, and you will literally be able to look at leads popping in as quickly as 1 second and go, yep, 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 no, don't want that one, yep, 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 or skip that altogether and just click the fully automate button and not even ever log in and just have it happen for you.
Interesting.
Pretty
Yeah.
cool stuff.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool. And not, I hate to bring this up and not to steal any of your thunder. I know there's at least one company out there that's done a little bit of that. Maybe we can talk offline or something as we explore other mutual opportunities. Because I don't know, I won't mention them here, out of respect for you. But I know that there is at least something out there. And hopefully by the time we get this video out, maybe the fully automated process will be in place, because I have a feeling that yours is going to be, at least at the beginning, and correct me if I'm wrong, more focused on automating this lead gen for around the book publishing process. So is it going to be a little more?
People profiling.
What's that? I'm sorry.
People profiling themselves, so using the book as the tool to automate their marketing and their business. Yes, I agree with you. There is other things out there. I haven't mentioned names either because I personally am not 100% happy with them. Like, there's glitches in them, and that's why I'm building the whole new system.
Okay, good. And that's good. And it's good that that's one of the things I always love when we talk with other entrepreneurs, and what viewers really need to understand is that many people can develop the same app or the same thing, because what will happen is new people will develop it to make it better, and new people will develop it to fix the things that they're not happy with, where maybe the first company was completely happy with it. So I'm happy to hear you're doing it. We're definitely going to have to stay on top of that. Let us know when it's, let us know, and the viewers know when it's, when it's released, and maybe we can get you some beta
Will
testers
do.
or something like that. So
Sounds great.
as far as lead gen goes, though, what about things like Hootsuite? And when we talk about automation, as far as lead gen, part of what I think of is you can automate some of your lead gen by automating your posts on Hootsuite. You can
Hmm.
automate things. You can cobble things together using tools like Zapier and any type of email automation, so you can make things fairly, you can really make things fairly automated at that point. Um,
Totally.
so where do you think, I mean, forget about the fact you're developing an awesome and epic tool that's going to take the place of all that. Where do you think all
As
that
if I'm
fits in?
constantly improving. No, where
Well,
does it all fit in?
yeah.
I don't actually see that as lead gen. That's where it fits in. I've used Hootsuite and various others. The one I actually use at the moment is Buffer,
Okay.
and how I use it and why I use it is, as with most of them, it's available on your phone and your PC or Mac, I should say, laptop, desktop, whatever you use. And it's brilliant because as I said, I started from a place with basically nothing. So I like to teach techniques that people can start from a place with nothing. So on Buffer's free account, you can have the four main social networks linked up. So that is your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, and your Google Plus to your phone, where you can literally, in a matter of seconds, type what you want to say, or stick a picture in, or even stick a video in, and send it instantly to all networks in their preferred time zone. So when more people are available on that network. So that's what I love to do around that space. But I don't see it as lead gen. I actually see it as relationship building. So for example, instead of networking physically, it's online networking. So I might send, for example, in the morning out at the relevant time, I might send a positive, uplifting image that might have a quote contained within it. In the middle of the day, I might send out a link then. So that could be lead gen to something relevant that I'm doing. But it could be, hey, letting people know about a webinar I'm excited about. It might not be my webinar. It might be someone else's. It could be something for a strategic alliance or cross-promotional partner that I'm working with. That's something I heavily endorse. It's a link to check out, not necessarily to buy anything, but just to check something out. But it does go into someone's funnel. And at the end of the day, I tend to generally end with a video. So what's something really inspirational that people would like to see? And if it's longer than about the 30 seconds they allow, I generally do that as a link as well. It doesn't always work. For example, the weekend I always do inspirational messages because I don't want to check in on anything on the weekend. But things like that is how I use it for. I would only define that middle one as lead gen, because a lot of it's just building that relationship. So when you do put out those automated posts as lead gen, people go, oh, I already love this person. I need to check this out.
So before we wrap up lead gen and move on into sales funnel, what's one thing somebody could do today to, before they get your awesome new app that you're developing, the epicness that it will be? What is something somebody could do today to improve their lead gen?
Okay, I will mention a name. Sign up for Opportunity, opportunity.com. There's no R. It's connected to LinkedIn. It's absolutely brilliant. It is the manual step. You need to copy and paste the email, but it automatically generates your lead. So you could copy paste an email saying, hey, I've got a new webinar coming up, or I've got a new book just releasing in the pre-sale special, whatever you want to say. Just make sure you include a link in it so it is actually lead gen, not just building a relationship. And there's amazing technologies, the changes they've made just now. You can actually get access to, through it, all of your LinkedIn contacts or all of the contacts on the system that you're not even connected to on LinkedIn. So I would say that's a really good free start point.
Okay, and then that helps you with lead gen. That helps you identify leads. It
It actually does the whole lot. So you put in
okay.
your search criteria. So for example, I'm offering services in this, I'm looking for someone this. So for me, I might say I'm offering services in this example in lead generation, and I'm looking for business coaches who want more leads, and that's what it'll bring me. Hey, we've just found 500 business coaches in your area. Now, traditionally, I would manually copy and paste an email to those 500, but they've just introduced new features where you can actually send up to 2,000 at a time.
Oh, okay.
So you can then go, well, those 500 people, okay, let's let them know about my webinar coming up on lead gen for business coaches.
Excellent. That's an excellent piece of advice. And that's a great place to wrap lead gen up and move into sales funnel. Now, it's something I think everybody knows what a sales funnel is. Why don't you take maybe 30 seconds and just give everybody a quick definition of what you picture this step and a sales funnel to actually be?
No, that makes sense. Everyone tends to know what a sales page is. You go there and someone sells you something. Everyone knows the importance of building a database. So you go to the, I don't know, homepage of your website and there's a form where someone can fill it out and they get a free something of value. So for example, it might be a sample chapter of your book in exchange for their thing of value, which is their email address. And then you're allowed legally, because once they opt in, to market to them at this address. And that's kind of how it traditionally works. It's not enough anymore, and it hasn't been for a long time. So how a sales funnel works is that this address you've got, which traditionally you might have sent out a monthly newsletter or something, and that, in my opinion, does jack all, you've now got the right to use that email address in a range of different ways. Not just that, but when they came to that page, that sales page, whether or they bought or not, and not everyone buys first time around, and depending on the price point, not everyone you send buys anyway, you're losing those people if they're not signing up for the free thing, and if they are and you're not contacting them, you're losing them as well. So how the sales funnel works is that that very first page of that sales funnel is probably not selling something. Or if it is, it's selling something of a very cheap value. I refer to that as the preview. When you sell something, I refer to that as the package. So what are you packaging together? It might be the printed book and the ebook for a discounted price, your primary product you plan to sell to someone. And there's another step within any single sales funnel, and I refer to that as promote. Here's what my definition of a sales funnel is. They come to that first landing page, they give you their email address, and then they're automatically redirected to the package. They do or don't buy, you don't care because they're in your database. If they do buy, they're handled differently to the people that don't buy, but they're still in your database. When they buy, because you've now got all the marketing happening in the background so you don't need to do anything, their landing page from purchasing your product is, would you like to promote the product, become an affiliate, things like that. That's the 3-step sales funnel I recommend. But when I talk about sales funnels, that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how to take these 3 steps further. So lead gen traditionally, that was flowing people into that very first page, that free offer of your very first sales funnel. But when you've got affiliates coming out the other end, they can actually do that for you. Now that's cool. Let's say you sell a $20 book and affiliates do it for you so you no longer need to do any lead gen. That's great, but you're selling a $20 book. How can we leverage the content of that book so that you're selling more? Maybe you want to turn the content of the book into an online course. Now you can send the affiliates out of, instead of back to the $20 book, maybe into the $2,000 course. And then a sales funnel is a completely different thing because it's not a single page with a free offer. It might be your sideways sales letter where they sign up for a free week of video training and they get sent a different video every day, which could go for anything to up to half an hour to build relationship with your prospective customer before you even try to sell them anything. There's so much in this sales funnel space, as you can probably hear.
Yeah, exactly. And you did mention the book a little bit, so talk just briefly about how a book fits in and where it might fit in for someone's sales funnel at this point.
Yeah, good question. I generally think it's the start point. The book these days should definitely be referred to as the new and improved business card. And I mean 2 things by that. Firstly, that the old style business card no longer works. If I ever rock up anywhere physically these days, which is seldom happens, but I won't take business cards with me because I don't believe in them. But the book is the new and improved business card. So much more space to fit in, for example, time to build a relationship with your prospective market, as well as for calls to action, which of course is the most important thing. And unlike a business card, the call to action isn't a phone number where they can utilize your time, or an email address even where they can be talking to you that way, or even a physical address for those people that still send snail mail. But what it is it's a space for you to send them to that very first page of your very first sales funnel. So for me, from the back of the book, I would be going to something like the course, for example, because the book already has been purchased. But the first page I would send them to from anywhere else, so any other lead gen technique, would be that free preview of the book. And what that is up to you. Traditionally, it was a sample chapter. I don't find that works so well these days. That may not replace with a free ebook. That's all well and good, but why are they going to buy it if they got the free one? Well, a good technique could be, here's my free ebook. They're in your database. The page they're redirected to the next stage of your funnel is, would you also like to get a physical copy for those of you that like to hold a physical copy in your hand? Okay, here's how much it costs me to print and post. You can have it at cost. Then you're not out of pocket. You're still running the process cash flow positive for your marketing. Another technique can be to skip the free preview altogether in this instance and go, no, I just want them to come for such a good offer that they purchase my book so I can move them to the next stage from there, and that works well as well. And some people don't even sell the book anymore. They might, for example, have The lead magnet that someone comes for their online course, they might only be interested in an online course, but they're using the book to profile them into that fully virtual space. They might use it as a lead magnet. Now, I just told you a suggestion where they were going to get a week's video training. Some people don't sign up for the video training. They get converted when they receive it. So the lead magnet is get a free copy of my book such and such, and I'm also going to give you a free preview of my program delivered to your inbox over the next week. And that I'm actually finding is one of the most popular at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, people want value, and if you're giving them value, and value not only that they can perceive, but they can go and implement, they're going to want to come back for more. And there was a lot, folks. You're going to have to go back and watch the replay because Kylee just gave you a whole lot of information. One of the things I want to try and do is simplify it just a little bit. If you picture a sales funnel just like a funnel, what you're trying to do is get the looky-loos and the casual people. You want to get all of them at first and then funnel it down to your real clients. And that's where a book really helps out, because if you write a book on a topic that everybody wants to hear about and a core problem that you can solve, you're going to get a lot of people at that big end of the sales funnel, a lot of looky-loos, so to speak, a lot of people who will never buy, never engage with you at all, but at least will learn about your service. And then as you work them through the funnel, as you give them more and more content, people are going to drop off, people are going to go by the wayside, and there's going to be less and less people funneling down through. And the beautiful part is that just as in a funnel, the most important things come through first, and then everything else stays on
Yep.
top. So it could be that those people might come to you after a while, or they might not. It might be like when you're pouring the Kool-Aid drink mix down the funnel and actually have a little water on. You know how it gets stuck to the side and only some of it comes through? Well, that's okay. The good stuff got through. I mean, does that kind of all make sense? Does that all fit in with what you're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
and make sense, Kylie?
That's actually a really good analogy. I must admit, I often take some of that stuff for granted. I always talk at high level with everything I do. So I must admit, I probably didn't make it basic enough for people, so I do apologize for that. But that's a really great analogy. What I'll add to it is that the reason I was talking the high end and the way I teach funnels is we don't want any residue left. We want every single person to drift through. So think of a funnel more like a sieve. Okay, the funnel's got one point at the end, but with the sieve, they're dropping out at different points to different things. Hey, they only want the free version, that's okay. They go from the free version of the book, for example, to the free version of maybe the membership program, to the free version of maybe a trial coaching session with you, by which stage you can convert them one-on-one at that point.
Right,
Some
exactly.
people also purchase the product. They might purchase a $20 book, then maybe a $200 membership program, and then maybe a $2,000 coaching package. I like to teach to add a naught. So what you said was brilliant, but I always like to take stuff to the next level. Put them through the sieve as opposed to the funnel.
There you go. And that, I think, is a good place for us to move on into marketing tools. Now, what are we talking about here?
Well, that's kind of what I alluded into. Marketing tools are more than one thing. Start with the book. As I said, it's a new and improved business card. But also, in the examples I gave, some people don't necessarily sell the book anymore. They might, for example, they might be using a marketing tool such as a webinar, for example. And while I teach fully automated techniques, and I like to teach low-cost or free-cost techniques, sometimes people don't do this. They spend money on the automation, and that's fine too. So someone might run, for example, an AdWords or a Facebook campaign to send traffic to this webinar. That's then costing them money. So I teach cash flow positive techniques. Where is your book? Your book is then the landing page after they register for your free webinar, so you can get back the money you spent on promoting it. Now it's running cash flow positive. So that's a good spot for it. But I've just recommended the techniques there. The book, wherever it fits, is number one. You must leverage the content of your book. Really, really simple. Our book has chapters. However many chapters in your book, if you want to make an online course, that's how many modules are in your membership program. Look within those chapters. Do you have subheadings or key topics you're covered? Now you know how many videos are in that week's training, for example. It's really that simple to leverage one thing into the other. Now you've got an online course. Do you want a webinar? I recommend yes. Now that could be evergreen, that's fully automated. You could choose to do them live because you want that interaction with your customer and just do them every so often. Entirely up to you. You could have a range of topics, as you could have a range of different books. But these are the three best tools. The webinar itself is not that different again, because once you've got the membership program, you need to actually market that membership program. And things I spoke to you about before, like for example, what I referred to as the sideways sales letter, where they get a different video each day for the week. Maybe on Monday, for example, they get a theory-based video. Maybe on Wednesday, they get a sales video which teaches them the practical, lets them apply what you've shared with them straight away. Maybe on Friday, for example, they get your most frequently asked questions. When it comes to the webinar, you can then translate that content again. The webinar, you're going to start, after your introduction and checking the right people are in the right space, you're going to start with the theory to tell them what they don't yet know. Then you're going to go into practical examples so they can see you know your stuff, and you're going to end by answering their questions, whether it be an open question time or a sale at the end where they can work with you more closely to get their questions answered. Every one of these techniques flows so perfectly into the other. It all really starts with leveraging the content of that book.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point though about the chapters of the book and creating a course out of it, because so many times people look at it and say, well, I only have a book and I only have this much to say, and they don't
No
realize
such
that.
thing as only. Yeah.
What's that?
No such thing as only. A book is very, very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Even the smallest books can be very, very powerful. Even if the book is 9 or 10 chapters, and even if the chapters for you feel thin, because and I say that because if you look at it, we grew up thinking books needed to be War and Peace, thinking they needed to be 100,000 words. And while I must admit, not to be judgmental, I still have an issue with people calling a 20-page book a book. It is technically a book,
Yeah.
and I get that. But there's some point in the middle where you can have a 20 to 40,000 word book and have a really good strong book, and turn that book into a really good strong program, turn it into a strong set of videos, turn it
Exactly.
into a coaching program, turn it into a number of things, and use those all as marketing tools. From a marketing tool standpoint, before we wrap this up and I tell people how to get a hold of you and we wrap up this episode, is there any one last key tip, trick, or technique you want to leave folks with from a marketing and marketing tools standpoint?
Just a summary of the three things. You need the book, you need the online course, and you need a webinar so people are getting you physically occasionally, even if it is evergreen, because with the book and the course, they're not getting that same aspect of you. So long as you've got those three things, or so long as you don't have those three things, but you're ready to start, just start. Creating a book is not as hard as it sounds, and once you've leveraged those three contents, you've got three invaluable marketing tools. That's three separate sales funnels. That's one lot of lead gen to go into them and work like a sieve. It all comes together when you get those marketing tools working.
Epic, epic advice. And folks, we've had an epic day talking with Kylee Ellis, the publishing and marketing queen, thepublishingandmarketingqueen.com. I've got her website on the screen. If you don't know where to start, if you haven't started your book yet, if you're afraid to start a book, if you're afraid to start all this other stuff, go out to thepublishingandmarketingqueen.com. Sign up for her free webinar where she'll give you tips and tricks about all of this stuff and start getting you down the right path. Because as she said, you've got to get started, even if you're afraid. Look, I was afraid to be on video. I mean, I've been on video all my life, but when I took my break, I was afraid to get back on video. Now I'm happy I did. Start the television network, the whole 9 yards. Fear is out there. Fear is real, but that's okay. You can overcome it. All you need is a little bit of help, a little bit of push, or maybe a kick in the pants like Kylee can give you. So, Kylee, it's been epic having you on the show today. People, everybody, I want you to go to thepublishingandmarketingqueen.com. It's on the website. Kylee, before I wrap this up and tell everybody to have an epic day, is there any one last quick thing you want to leave our audience with today?
In the words of Nike, just do it.
Just do it. I love it. Just do it. So, folks, just do it. Head over to thepublishingandmarketingqueen.com. Look up Kylee Ellis. Take a look at what she's got to offer. Sign up for her webinar. You're going to be happy you did. And until we meet again, until we see you on the next episode of Expert Showcase, make it an epic day.